Okay, well, the mayor's race is really heating up, that's for sure. And joining us live this afternoon is Josh Matlow, mayoral candidate. He's in studios to talk about his plans for Ontario Place, which include plans to refuse to sell 16 acres of city property needed to develop a private spa at the attraction. Councillor, candidate Matlow, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Explain your philosophy or plan for Ontario Place, because we saw another candidate there earlier, Anna Bylaw. What is your position on what we should be doing with Ontario Place and what shouldn't we be doing?
What we should be doing is, as a city and as mayor, I will be very clear that our waterfront is not for sale. The city owns 16 acres of land right along the shoreline on both the north side but also on the West Island. Mm-hmm. And it is clear that the province will need to use our land to be able to allow for a private spa. So I'm saying that our waterfront isn't for sale, that I want to see Ontario Place be returned to a vision that is being worked on by landscape architects, by groups like Ontario Place for All, a place for people to come together in a rejuvenated, refreshed, and animated place that is natural. You know, there are foxes, there's beavers, there's minks, there's hundreds of types of birds, some of which are on the species at risk list. Mm-hmm. If this spa was developed, over 800 trees would be destroyed on the West Island. And I remind Premier Ford, there are so many Ontarians, along with Torontonians, who don't have backyards, who can't afford a cottage, who can't afford to go to a big private spa, but would want Ontario Place to be for them again, and that's what I support. So, you know, we need to come forward with real proposals to block this privatization of our waterfront. I'm doing what I know I can do as mayor with the property that Torontonians own.
I heard you say in your remarks earlier today how much you remember going as a child, as I did, down to Ontario Place, sort of, having a good time with your family, that sort of thing. But Ontario Place has been shuttered effectively for, what, 10, 15 years now?
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, but my question is, have people not moved on already and found other alternatives, or do you think you can actually bring people back?
I actually am concerned that our waterfront hasn't been as publicly accessible and public as in its entirety as it should have been for years. There are so many people who, again, don't have cottages, they don't have backyards, they want a place on our waterfront to be able to come and be able to enjoy every season of the year. And that's what I want to see for Ontario Place. I do remember as a kid, my parents would take me to Ontario Place. I've got a 10-year-old daughter who I want to bring to a rejuvenated Ontario Place again. But that won't happen if it's now taken over by a huge private spa. Doug Ford may be working for Therme Spa. My job is to work on behalf of Torontonians if I'm elected. And we're going to hear from other candidates some unrealistic ideas. I understand that there's a pressure during elections to come up with things to put out releases. But the reality is this is too serious to play around with. We need to make sure that we have concrete proposals. And we can't decide what Doug Ford is going to do, but we can, as a city, decide what we're going to do with our own land. And I'm just saying very clearly, if I'm mayor, our waterfront is not going to be for sale. It's going to remain in public hands. So
with your proposal in mind, what you've thought about, what's the budget? What is the number that we're looking at here to make Ontario Place in the vision that you have?
Well, my vision doesn't overstep or overreach what the community is asking for, which is for the government to work with the city, to work with Ontario Place for All, to work with landscape architects and designers, and come forward with a vision that actually is public, that's animated, that's refreshed, and makes sense. What we don't want to see is a large portion of our waterfront to be essentially privatized into a giant spa that most people will never visit. Some people will not be able to afford to visit, and certainly Ontario Place will not be what it was meant to be in the first place, which is a public place for us all.
Right. Okay, Councillor, candidate Matlow, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. Thanks for joining us here on Live at Noon today. Appreciate this.
Anytime. Thank you.
Okay, great.